my topic is string theory. String theory is a theory that is meant to unify two already existing theories, the theory of quantum mechanics and the theory of general relativity. Quantum mechanics is basically how we interact with the world. So things like buoyancy, gravity, friction, while general relativity specifically goes on to explain how gravity works. So the way string theory, the way we have described it, is that in the tiniest of particles, if you look at an object and you go to the tiniest particle within it, there are tiny filaments of vibrating strings, which is where the name string theory comes from. And the idea is that these strings vibrate in a particular manner to produce a particular particle. An example I've come up with is if you have a violin and you pull a bow along a high note, you'll produce a high note. But if you pull it along a different note, it might produce a lower one. So the way the strings vibrate differently produces two different notes. Similarly, the way these strings vibrate produces two different particles, or many more. But what we found is, string theory does not work in our perception of reality. But it does seem to work in a reality where we assume 10 dimensions of space, which is complicated. And the way that these dimensions are described is that it is the space in which these strings vibrate. So you can have strings with more possible directions to vibrate in, and ones with fewer. So if you have 2 dimensions, it can only vibrate up, down, left, and right. But if you have a 4th dimension, it can go up, down, left, right, forward, backwards, and other. So these vibrations are determined by the shape of these dimensions. And in turn, these vibrations determine literally everything around us, because these vibrations determines the particles. But another thing we see is that, despite what we would think of being random in terms of how they vibrate, we have many constants. We see many constants. There are a list of roughly, I believe, 20 numbers that are constant, that are measured with very great precision. Why do we only see those numbers when these strings can vibrate in such great varieties? And leads to the idea, everything in our universe is like that because our universe consists of dimensions with very specific shapes. So coming back to the example of a 4th dimension, you have up, down, left, right, forward, backward, and then other, but that other could be so many different things. But in our universe, we only have one of those different things. Which in turn leads to the idea, what if there are other universes? Each one where the shape of that 4th dimension and all other dimensions is just slightly different. Which gives us this idea of not a universe, but a multiverse, consisting of universes. And that is where string theory leads us. because that idea allows us to explain how we have so many different constants and why they're so specific. They don't change. And this idea that of a multiverse, where you have every possible option. Because of this, string theory tells us that quite literally anything can happen. And I think that's an important thing to take away from this. Because now we have anything can happen.